My name is Evelyn, and I am 32 years old living in the bright and busy city of Los Angeles, California, where the sun always seems to be shining, even when your life feels like it is falling apart. I have spent most of my adult life working in the independent film industry because I have always loved the magic of storytelling and the way a good movie can make you feel like you are part of something bigger than yourself. My world is filled with scripts and coffee and long hours in small offices that smell like old paper and expensive perfume. I work as a creative coordinator for a boutique production company, and I take a lot of pride in my ability to take a messy idea and turn it into something beautiful on the page. I grew up in a small town where people did not dream as big as I did, so moving to the City of Angels felt like I was finally coming home. I am the kind of person who believes in hard work and being kind to everyone you meet because you never know who is struggling or who might be the next big star. However, my belief in the goodness of people was severely tested when I met a woman named Helen. Helen was about 15 years older than me, and she carried herself with an air of importance that she had not actually earned. She had been hired through a connection with one of our silent partners, which is just a fancy way of saying she got the job because of who she knew instead of what she could do. From the very first day, she walked into our office on Sunset Boulevard wearing a bright red suit and way too much gold jewelry. I knew things were going to be difficult. She did not just enter a room, she occupied it like a hostile force. Helen had a very loud voice and an even louder personality, and she spent most of her time talking about how talented she was instead of actually doing any work. She claimed to be a master of the written word and a visionary who just needed the right platform to shine. I wanted to believe her at first because I am a natural optimist, and I thought that maybe she was just misunderstood. I tried to be her friend, and I even felt a little bit of empathy for her because it must be hard to be in your mid-40s and still trying to find your big break in a town that worships youth. But it did not take long for me to realize that Helen was not just ambitious, she was a predator who looked for people she could use to get ahead. She had no respect for boundaries, and she would walk into my office without knocking and start complaining about the lighting or the temperature or the way the receptionists looked at her. She was a master of making herself the victim in every situation, and she never took responsibility for her own mistakes. If she missed a deadline, it was because her computer was too slow, and if she made a typo, it was because the software was out of date. She would often say that she was a professional writer, but whenever I saw her work, it looked like something a middle school student would turn in for a failing grade. Her sentences did not make sense, and she used big words incorrectly just to try and sound smart. I remember one time, she used the word redundant to describe a sunset, and when I tried to explain that the word did not fit, she got very angry and told me that I did not understand high art. That was the first big red flag, but it was certainly not the last. Helen decided that I was going to be her work daughter, and she started acting like she was my mentor, even though I was the one who was constantly fixing her errors and teaching her how to use the basic filing system. She would tell people that she was taking me under her wing, but in reality, she was just using me as a shield to hide her own incompetence. I was young and I wanted to be helpful, so I let it happen for a while because I thought it was just part of the job. I spent many late nights at my desk rewriting her reports and fixing her emails so that our bosses would not realize how little she actually knew about the film business. My life became a cycle of doing my own job and then doing hers too, just to keep the peace. I was tired, and I was starting to feel very unsatisfied with my situation because I was doing all the work while Helen was taking all the credit. She would go into meetings with the executive producers and talk about the great ideas we had discussed, and she would always make it sound like they were her ideas alone. I started to feel invisible in my own career, and that is a very dangerous feeling to have in a city like Los Angeles, where you have to fight for every bit of recognition you get. The real trouble started when I began working on a very special project of my own. I had spent 2 years writing a script for a limited television series about the history of the hidden jazz clubs in the city, and I had put my heart and soul into every page. It was my best work, and I was so proud of it that I eventually felt comfortable enough to tell Helen about it during a lunch break at a small cafe down the street. I thought she would be happy for me, but instead I saw a flicker of something dark in her eyes. It was jealousy, plain and simple, but she covered it up quickly with a fake smile and asked if she could read it. Against my better judgment, I gave her a copy because I thought that maybe she could give me some honest feedback. That was the biggest mistake of my career. A few weeks later, I walked into the office of the chief executive officer for a scheduled meeting about our upcoming slate of projects, and I saw my script sitting on his mahogany desk. But there was something wrong with it. The title page had been replaced, and instead of my name, it had Helen's name printed in bold letters. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I watched as Helen stood there and told the chief executive officer that she had stayed up for months writing this masterpiece and that it was the culmination of her life's work. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. She just kept talking about her vision and her characters as if she had actually created them. I tried to speak up, but she talked right over me, and the chief executive officer was so impressed with the pitch that he didn't even give me a chance to say a word. I went back to my desk, and I cried because I felt like I had been robbed of my future. I realized then that Helen was not just a difficult colleague, she was a thief who had stolen the most valuable thing I owned. I knew I had to do something, but I did not know how to fight someone who was so good at lying. I started by trying to talk to her privately, and I asked her why she had put her name on my work. She laughed in my face and told me that she had improved it so much that it was basically hers now anyway. She said that I should be grateful that someone with her reputation was willing to attach their name to my little hobby project. She told me that if I tried to tell anyone the truth, she would make sure I never worked in this town again. She said she had friends in high places and that a young girl like me didn't stand a chance against a seasoned professional like her. I felt so small and so defeated. I tried to go to the Department of Human Resources, but the woman who worked there was a close friend of Helen, and she basically told me that without physical proof, there was nothing she could do. She suggested that I just learn to be a better team player. This made everything worse because now Helen knew I was trying to fight back, and she started making my life a living hell. She would give me the worst assignments and tell everyone in the office that I was being difficult and emotional because I was jealous of her success. People started looking at me differently, and I felt like I was losing my friends and my professional reputation. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling wondering if I should just quit and move back to my hometown. I felt like I had reached the lowest point of my life. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me about how you should never let someone steal your joy or your hard work. I realized that Helen's greatest weakness was her own ego and her lack of actual skill. She had stolen the script, but she did not have the talent to actually do the work that comes after a script is bought. A script is just the beginning of a very long and difficult process, and I knew that Helen would eventually have to prove she could write the rest of the episodes. I decided to play a long game. I stopped fighting her and I started acting like I was okay with everything. I told her I was sorry for being upset and that I realized she was right about her name being more valuable than mine. She loved that because she was a narcissist who needed constant praise. She let me back into her inner circle, and she even started asking me to help her with the revisions that the producers were demanding. I agreed to help, but this time I did things differently. I did not give her my best ideas anymore. I gave her ideas that sounded good on the surface, but were actually full of plot holes and logical inconsistencies. I knew that she was too lazy to check the work herself and too uneducated in the craft of writing to notice the mistakes I was planting. I also started keeping a very detailed log of every conversation we had and every email we exchanged. I made sure to BCC my personal email address on every single piece of correspondence. I was building a paper trail that showed exactly who was doing the work and who was just pretending. While I was doing this, I also started talking to other people in the company who had been bullied by Helen. I found out that she had a long history of taking credit for other people's work, and that almost everyone in the accounting department hated her because she was always trying to cheat on her expense reports. I made a few friends in the IT department too, and they were more than happy to help me after I told them about how Helen had treated the cleaning staff. The tension in the office was growing, and the stakes were getting higher every day because the production company had already spent a lot of money on the pre-production for my series. They were hiring actors and looking for locations, and the pressure was on Helen to deliver the scripts for the next 5 episodes. She was panicking because she couldn't even write a coherent shopping list, let alone a 50-page television script. She would come into my office and beg me to write the episodes for her, and she promised that she would give me a producer credit if I did. I told her I was too busy with my other work and that she was the master writer, so she should be able to handle it easily. I watched her sweat, and I watched her start to unravel as the deadlines approached. She started showing up to work late with messy hair and bloodshot eyes, and she was constantly yelling at the interns. The moment of truth finally came when the executive producers called a big meeting to read the latest draft of the second episode. Helen had tried to write it herself after I refused to help, and the result was a complete disaster. It was full of misspelled words, and the dialogue was so bad that it sounded like it had been translated back and forth between 5 different languages. During the meeting, the lead actor, who was a very famous and respected man in the industry, stopped reading halfway through a scene and asked who had written this garbage. He said it was an insult to his intelligence and that he would walk away from the project if the writing did not improve immediately. The room went silent, and all eyes turned to Helen. She turned bright red, and then she did exactly what I knew she would do. She pointed her finger at me and said that it was my fault. She told the producers that I had been responsible for the final polish of the script and that I had deliberately sabotaged her because I was bitter. She lied right to their faces, and for a second I thought they were going to believe her. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. This was the moment I had been preparing for. I stood up and I didn't raise my voice. I stayed calm, and I looked the chief executive officer right in the eye. I told him that I had never seen that version of the script before, and that I had been keeping a record of all my work. I pulled out a thick folder that contained every single original draft of the pilot script, along with the date-stamped emails and the digital metadata that proved I was the sole author of the original work. I also showed them the messages Helen had sent me begging me to write the episodes for her because she didn't know how to do it. But the final blow was something Helen didn't see coming. I had found out through my friends in the IT department that Helen had been using the company's internal server to store documents she had stolen from other people in the past. I didn't even have to say anything about that because at that exact moment, the head of the IT department walked in with a printed report showing that Helen had accessed my private folders dozens of times over the last month. The evidence was irrefutable. Helen started to scream and cry, and she said that we were all conspiring against her because we were jealous of her beauty and her talent. It was a pathetic sight to see a grown woman acting like a spoiled child. The chief executive officer looked disgusted, and he told Helen to go to her office and wait for the Department of Human Resources to arrive. He then turned to me and apologized for not listening to me sooner. He said that he had always suspected something was off about Helen, but he hadn't wanted to cause trouble because of her connection to the silent partner. But now that her incompetence and her dishonesty were out in the open, he couldn't ignore it any longer. Helen was fired that afternoon, and she was escorted out of the building by security. As she was walking past my desk, she stopped and tried to give me one last look of hatred, but I just smiled at her and went back to my work. She was gone, and the air in the office suddenly felt much cleaner. However, the drama was not quite over. A few days later, Helen called my cell phone from a blocked number. She was in a full state of panic, and her voice was shaking. She tried to tell me that she was sorry and that she had only stolen my work because she was under so much pressure to provide for her family. She started crying those fake tears again, and she begged me to call the producers and tell them it was all a big misunderstanding. She said that if I didn't help her, she would lose her house and her kids would have nothing. It was the most manipulative thing I had ever heard. I took a deep breath, and I told her that I knew everything she had done. I told her that I knew about the other scripts she had stolen and the money she had been embezzling through her expense reports. I told her that I had seen all the emails. Now the truth is I had only seen a few of the emails, but I knew that Helen was so paranoid and so guilty that she would believe I had seen everything. My bluff worked perfectly. She went silent for a long time, and then she started rambling about how she was going to sue me for invasion of privacy. I just laughed and told her that she should probably save her money for a good lawyer because the company was planning to sue her for breach of contract and intellectual property theft. The confidence drained out of her voice, and she sounded like a broken woman. I told her that she had built her own reputation through lies and that she was finally facing the consequences of her own actions. I told her to get a life that did not involve me, and then I hung up the phone. I have never felt more powerful than I did in that moment. The consequences for Helen were exactly what she deserved. Word traveled fast in the small world of Los Angeles film production, and within a week everyone knew that Helen was a fraud and a thief. Her name became a warning to other companies, and she was blacklisted from every major studio in the city. She lost her fancy car and her expensive apartment, and the last I heard, she was working at a telemarketing firm in the Valley. She had tried to take a shortcut to success, and she ended up falling off a cliff. As for me, things worked out better than I could have imagined. The production company decided to move forward with my series, and they gave me the full credit I deserved as the creator and executive producer. I got a significant raise and a much bigger office, and I finally felt like I was being seen for my actual talent. The project was a huge success, and it opened so many doors for me in the industry. But more than the success, I value the lesson I learned. I learned that you have to stand up for yourself, and that the truth always has a way of coming out if you're patient and brave enough to wait for it. I am much more careful now about who I trust, and I always make sure to protect my intellectual property with the highest level of security. I also make sure to mentor young writers the right way by encouraging them and giving them the credit they earn instead of trying to steal their light. My life is full of work that I love and people I respect, and I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. Sometimes I think about Helen, and I wonder if she ever realizes that she was the architect of her own destruction. I highly doubt it, because people like her are usually incapable of self-reflection. She probably still tells anyone who will listen that she was a great writer who was sabotaged by a jealous young girl. But it doesn't matter what she says, because her words have no power anymore. I am the one telling the stories now, and I am making sure they are stories worth telling. Looking back on the whole situation, I realize that Helen was like a character in a bad movie who thinks they are the hero when they are actually the villain. She tried to write a story where she came out on top, but she forgot that in the real world you have to actually do the work if you want to keep the prize. I am 32 years old now, and I feel like I am just getting started. Los Angeles is still a tough city, and there will always be people like Helen trying to take what isn't theirs, but I am not that naive girl I used to be. I am Evelyn, and I am a writer, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be. The smog still hangs over the city, and the traffic is still terrible, but when I look out of my office window at the Hollywood sign, I don't feel like an outsider anymore. I feel like I belong here because I earned my place through hard work and integrity. The industry is small, and people still whisper about the time the crazy lady tried to steal a whole series from a coordinator, but those whispers are just background noise to me now. I have new scripts to write and new worlds to build, and I am doing it all on my own terms. My journey has not been easy, but it has been mine, and that is something no one can ever take away from me again. I often remember the feeling of that rope burn Helen gave me when she was trying to climb over me, but the scars have faded, and they just remind me of how strong I really am. I have learned to appreciate the slow climb up the stairs, because the view from the top is so much better when you know you didn't take the elevator. My story is a long one, and it is far from over, but the chapter with Helen is closed for good, and I have never been happier to turn the page. I have a sense of peace that comes from knowing I fought a bully and won, not by sinking to her level, but by rising above it and letting her own weight pull her down. Life in Los Angeles is a series of scenes, and I am finally the director of my own life, and that is the best revenge of all. I spend my weekends now at the beach in Santa Monica, watching the waves and thinking about new ideas, and I feel a deep sense of gratitude for everything that happened. Even the bad parts taught me something valuable about human nature and the importance of holding onto your own truth. I am surrounded by a team of creative people who actually care about the work, and we support each other instead of tearing each other down. We have created a culture where honesty is valued and where everyone's voice is heard regardless of their age or their title. It is a far cry from the toxic environment Helen tried to create, and it makes me proud to go to work every single day. I have even started a small workshop for aspiring female writers to teach them how to protect their work and how to navigate the complicated politics of the film industry. I want to make sure that no other young woman has to go through what I went through with Helen. I tell them my story, and I show them my documentation as a roadmap for how to handle a situation like that. It feels good to give back and to turn a negative experience into something that can help others. The city of Los Angeles is full of dreamers, and I am glad to be one of the ones who made it through the storm with my integrity intact. I know there will be more challenges ahead because that is the nature of life, but I am ready for them. I have my voice and I have my pen, and I have the knowledge that I am enough just as I am. Helen might have tried to steal my script, but she could never steal my spirit or my passion for storytelling. And as I sit here today looking at the palm trees, swaying in the wind, I know that I am exactly where I am meant to be, and that is a feeling that no one can ever take from me. The revenge was sweet not because I saw her suffer, but because I saw myself succeed in spite of her. That is the ultimate goal for any creative person in this town, and I am living proof that it is possible to win the right way. My name is Evelyn, and this is my story, and it is a story of triumph over greed and truth over lies. And I think that is a story worth sharing with the world. I hope that anyone else out there who is dealing with a Helen in their life knows that they have the power to change their own narrative, and that the end of the story is still yours to write. You just have to keep moving forward and never let anyone tell you that your voice doesn't matter. Because it does matter, and it is the most powerful tool you have. So keep writing and keep dreaming and keep fighting for what is yours. The world needs your stories and the world needs your truth, and as long as you stay true to yourself, you will always find your way home. I am glad I didn't give up, and I am glad I didn't let Helen win, because the life I have now is more beautiful than any script I could have ever written, and that is the honest truth from the heart of a woman who finally knows her own worth in the City of Angels. There were times during the Act 2 of my life where I felt like the villain was winning, and the plot was too dark to find the light, but every good story needs a conflict to make the resolution feel earned, and my resolution feels better than any movie ending I have ever seen. I am peaceful, and I am happy, and I am free from the shadow of someone else's ego. I can breathe the air of this city and feel like I am a part of its history now, and that is a gift that I will treasure for the rest of my days. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to steal your light, just remember that they can only do it if you let them. Hold on to your spark and keep stoking the fire, and eventually the truth will burn bright enough for everyone to see. That is what I did, and it made all the difference in the world. And now I am going to get back to my newest project, which is a story about a woman who finds her strength in the most unlikely place. And I have a feeling it is going to be my best work yet, because it comes from a place of deep experience and unwavering hope. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you are the author of your own life, so make sure you make it a good one. There is nothing more powerful than a person who knows who they are and isn't afraid to stand up for it, and that is exactly who I have become. The sun is setting over the Pacific Ocean now, and the sky is turning a beautiful shade of purple and orange, and for the first time in a long time, I don't feel redundant, I feel exactly right. And I am ready for whatever comes next in this wild and wonderful life I have built for myself in the heart of California. My story is mine, and it is beautiful, and it is finally true. There is a sense of closure that comes with years of distance, and looking back at the events that shaped my career, I see that the challenges were just stepping stones. Helen was a hurdle that I had to jump over to realize my own potential, and for that I am almost grateful to her. Without her, I might have stayed in my shell and never fought for my own creative rights. She forced me to grow up and to grow strong and to learn the business side of the industry, which is just as important as the artistic side. I am a better professional now because of the ordeal she put me through, and I am a better human being because I chose mercy and justice over bitterness and rage. My revenge was not about being mean, it was about being right, and there is a huge difference between the two. When you seek justice, you are trying to restore balance, but when you seek pure revenge, you are just trying to cause pain, and I am glad I stayed on the side of justice. It has allowed me to keep my heart open and my mind clear for all the new stories that are waiting to be told, and I can't wait to see what the next chapter holds for me and for everyone who believes in the power of the truth. It has been over 10 years since I last spoke to Helen, and I hope she has found some peace in her own life, though I suspect she is still chasing the same ghosts. But those ghosts don't haunt me anymore, and I am walking in the sunshine of my own success, and that is the most poetic ending I could have ever asked for. The industry keeps moving and new people come and go, but the lessons I learned will stay with me forever, and they are the foundation of everything I do now. I am Evelyn, and I am proud of the woman I have become, and I am proud of the work I do, and I am proud of the way I handled the biggest challenge of my life. And that is where I will leave you with the knowledge that you are stronger than you think, and you are worth more than anyone will ever give you credit for unless you demand it for yourself. So go out there and be the hero of your own story, and don't let anyone else hold the pen for you. You have a voice, and you have a vision, and you have everything you need to succeed if you just stay true to who you are and never stop fighting for what is right. The end of one story is just the beginning of another, and I am so excited to see where mine goes from here. The city of Los Angeles is waiting, and so is the rest of my life, and I am ready to embrace every single moment of it with an open heart and a clear conscience. And that is the true meaning of a happy ending in a town that doesn't always give them out for free. I earned mine, and I am going to enjoy every second of it. My career is flourishing, and my heart is full, and I am finally the woman I always dreamed I could be back when I was just a little girl in a small town dreaming of the big city lights. I am home, and I am happy, and I am free, and that is the best story of all. Looking forward, I see a future where I continue to grow and evolve, and I am excited to see how my writing changes as I gain more wisdom and experience. I have realized that storytelling is not just about the words on the page, but about the life you live behind those words, and I am making sure that my life is as rich and honest as possible. I am surrounded by people who inspire me and who push me to be better every day, and I am so lucky to have found my tribe in this big and sometimes lonely city. We all have our struggles and our obstacles to overcome, but it is how we handle those moments that truly defines us, and I am proud of the way I handled mine. I have turned my pain into purpose and my fear into courage, and I have come out the other side stronger and more resilient than ever before. I am a survivor and I am a creator, and I am a woman who knows her own power, and I will never let anyone take that away from me again. The world is full of possibilities, and I am ready to explore every single one of them with the same passion and dedication that I brought to my very first script. My journey has been long and difficult, but it has also been incredibly rewarding, and I wouldn't change a single thing about it, because it made me who I am today. I am Evelyn, and I am 32 years old, and I am just getting started on the best chapter of my life yet. The lights of the city are twinkling below me like a sea of stars, and I know that I am one of them now, and that I am shining brighter than ever before. And that is the most perfect ending to this story that I could ever imagine. Thank you for being a part of it with me, and I hope it inspires you to write your own beautiful ending too. Good night from the City of Angels, and may all your stories be as true and as powerful as mine. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you survived the worst someone could throw at you, and you didn't break. That is what I carry with me now, every time I walk into a meeting or sit down to start a new project. I know I have the tools to handle any situation, and I know I have the integrity to do it the right way. My professional reputation is solid, and my personal life is filled with joy, and that is something that no amount of money or fame could ever replace. I have learned to value the simple things like a good conversation and a job well done, and I have learned to let go of the things that don't serve me anymore. Helen was a difficult lesson, but she was a necessary one, and I am grateful for the perspective she gave me. I am no longer afraid of the future because I know I can handle whatever it brings, and I am looking forward to seeing where my creativity takes me next. I am a storyteller at heart, and I will keep telling my stories until the very end because that is who I am, and that is what I was born to do. And in a town like this, that is the greatest success of all. I have found my voice, and I am using it to make the world a little bit brighter and a little bit more honest, and that is a legacy I can be proud of. So here is to the dreamers and the writers and the people who never give up even when the odds are against them. May you find your own truth, and may you have the courage to stand up for it no matter what. Because in the end, that is the only thing that really matters, and that is the only thing that will last. I am Evelyn, and I am finally at peace, and I am so ready for the next adventure. The end.